The gallery smelled faintly of varnish and old wood, a quiet hum of the city filtering through the tall, arched windows. He walked in slowly, the click of his shoes on the polished floor loud against the otherwise hushed space. Paintings and photographs lined the walls, each frame holding its own little universe, yet none of them pulled at him the way they said they should. She was there first, standing by a large canvas near the center. Not posed, not primped, not waiting for anyone's attention. Just there, examining a small painting with an intensity that made the edges of the image seem sharper, more alive. The light from above caught in her hair, scattering strands of gold across the shadows of her face. For a moment, he thought she might be part of the exhibit herself, an installation of calm observation, impossible to ignore. He hesitated, unsure if approaching her would break the spell. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he asked finally, nodding toward the painting she studied. She turned slowly, eyes bright and assessing, not startled but curious. "It is," she said. Her voice was quiet but firm, carrying an honesty that made him catch his breath. "But it's not finished, not really. It's like it's hiding something it can't yet say." He nodded, feeling that familiar itch of wanting to understand more. "I always feel like that," he admitted. "Like I'm looking at something I'll never fully grasp." She smiled, a small, knowing smile that didn't invite pity, only recognition. "Maybe that's the point," she said. "The work, the world, it's all about what we bring to it, not what's already there." He studied her then, realizing he had no idea who she was, yet he wanted to. Her presence was magnetic, not because of any deliberate allure, but because she existed fully in the space, unpretentious, unmeasured. It made the gallery, the paintings, even the light feel sharper, more urgent. "You come here often?" he asked, almost hoping for an excuse to stay longer. "Sometimes," she said, tilting her head. "But mostly, I watch. People don't notice when they're busy looking at the art instead of each other." For a moment, they simply stood there together, two strangers enveloped by color and shadow, by the quiet hum of observation. He realized he had stepped into more than a gallery, he had stepped into the kind of moment that didn't repeat. And somehow, against all odds, it felt like the beginning. The rain had started softly by the time they left the gallery, a gentle patter that turned the streets into a quiet river of reflections. He didn't usually notice small details like puddles or the way light shimmered on wet pavement, but tonight it felt like the world had been polished just enough for them to step into it. She walked beside him, hands tucked into the pockets of her coat, shoulders relaxed. She didn't speak at first, letting the rhythm of the rain and the footsteps fill the silence. It wasn't awkward, it was deliberate, a pause that gave shape to something unspoken. "You don't talk much," he finally said, unsure if it was a question or an observation. "I listen," she replied simply, and the way she said it made it feel like a revelation rather than a defense. "Listening tells you more than talking ever could." He considered that, thinking about how often he had filled the silence with noise, small talk, laughter, words he didn't mean, just to feel less alone. With her, he realized words weren't necessary. Presence was enough. They passed under the soft glow of street lamps, the kind that made the rain look like it was suspended in time. He noticed her glance at the puddles, her expression caught between curiosity and amusement. "You're seeing things differently tonight," he said. "Maybe," she said. "Or maybe I just notice things when I'm not trying to control them." He laughed quietly, a little self-conscious, because he realized that had always been his problem, trying to control everything, even moments like this, until they lost their edges. She, in contrast, seemed to bend the world around her simply by existing in it. At a corner, the rain intensified, drumming against the umbrellas of distant pedestrians. She stopped, letting the water soak the tips of her shoes. "It's strange," she said. "Most people would run from it. But sometimes, you just have to step into the rain and let it remind you that you're alive." He looked at her, really looked, and saw a quiet courage he hadn't expected, an ease with imperfection, with unpredictability. "I think I'd like to be like that," he admitted. She turned her face toward him, a small smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "You already are," she said. "You just don't always see it." For a while, they stood there, listening to the rain, two strangers moving at the same pace, sharing the same small, fragile world. And in that silence, he felt the first real shift, the sense that something he had been searching for, connection, understanding, a spark of truth, was finally within reach. The cafe was quiet, almost empty, except for a few scattered patrons hunched over laptops and steaming cups of coffee. The smell of roasted beans hung in the air, mingling with the faint sweetness of pastries cooling on the counter. He had chosen a corner table by the window, partly to watch the street and partly to watch her. She arrived moments later, slipping through the door with the easy grace of someone unbothered by the world outside. She shook off a few raindrops, tucking them into her coat, and smiled when she saw him. "I hope you saved me a seat," she said. "I did," he replied, gesturing toward the chair across from him. Her eyes flicked to the steaming cup of coffee he had ordered, and she laughed softly. "You know me too well," she said. He smiled, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the drink. Sitting across from her, he noticed how the light from the window caught the subtle expressions in her face, the way her brow furrowed slightly when she concentrated, the quick lift of a corner of her mouth when she smiled. He realized that he had been searching for these small details without knowing it. "Tell me about you," he said, leaning forward. "Not the public version, not the one people expect to see. Just you." She tilted her head, studying him. For a moment, he thought she might deflect, might dodge the question, but instead she spoke, her voice calm, steady, and open. "I make things," she said simply. "Sometimes art, sometimes moments that people don't notice. Mostly, I try to make the world a little more honest, in whatever small way I can." He nodded, sensing that her words carried more weight than any explanation he could have imagined. "And do you succeed?" he asked. "Some of the time," she said with a faint shrug. "That's enough." A silence fell between them, comfortable and unhurried. Outside, the rain had slowed to a drizzle, leaving a soft glow on the pavement. He watched the way she traced the rim of her cup with her fingers, and he realized that he had been waiting for this, the quiet, unpolished truth of someone's presence. "You know," he said, after a moment, "I thought I knew what I was looking for. But I didn't. Not until now." She smiled, a small, knowing curve that didn't need words to explain itself. "Maybe," she said, "you weren't supposed to." And in that shared silence, amid the hum of the cafe and the soft light of the rainy afternoon, he felt something shift. He understood, suddenly, that the world could be more than surfaces and appearances, that the real moments, the ones that mattered, were always quietly waiting beneath. "You're not the model?" he asked again, quieter this time, as though speaking softly might make the question less awkward, less sudden. The room felt warmer than the street outside, the soft hum of the studio lights wrapping around them like a gentle insistence that the world could pause for just a moment. She laughed, not a loud laugh, not forced, but the kind of small, easy laugh that made the air feel lighter. "No," she said. "I'm just me." He blinked, unsure if he had heard correctly. He had assumed, without thinking, that the figure moving so naturally in front of the camera had to be the model. He realized now how easily he had let illusion replace reality. "But, you were standing right there," he stammered, pointing vaguely at where the photos had been taken. "Everyone thought, well, I thought, that I belonged in front of the lens." She finished for him, tilting her head slightly. Her eyes held no accusation, only gentle curiosity. "It's a common mistake." He felt a flush creeping up his neck, a mix of embarrassment and something else, admiration, maybe, for the way she could exist so fully without performing. He noticed the faint traces of graphite on her fingers, the smudge of ink on her wrist. She was a creator, not a subject, a maker of truths rather than a bearer of them. "So, what do you do, then?" he asked, genuinely curious. She stepped closer to the wall where sketches, color swatches, and half-finished notes were pinned, each one a fragment of some larger vision. "I make sure the images don't lie," she said. "Or at least that they lie honestly." He studied the wall, noticing the faces that were sharp, blurred, or intentionally unfinished. None of them were hers. "Why not include yourself?" he asked. She shrugged lightly, smiling as though the question had been asked 100 times before. "I'm already here," she said. "No need for proof." He turned back toward the space where the shoot had taken place, realizing the truth of her words. He had spent so long chasing perfection, capturing what seemed flawless on the surface, that he had forgotten to notice the living, breathing reality in front of him. I'm sorry," he said, softly, "for assuming." Her smile deepened, warmer, intimate, like sunlight brushing over quiet waters. It's okay, she said. You noticed eventually. The studio seemed to sigh around them, the shadows stretching and folding into the corners, the lights dimming as if giving him space. In that stillness, he understood that this unframed, unposed moment, was the real image he had been searching for all along. He didn't reach for the camera. He didn't need to. She was already perfectly, entirely, herself. If you want, I can now combine all 4 expanded scenes into a polished, flowing short story with seamless transitions, so it reads like a cohesive narrative rather than 4 standalone scenes. This would also make the emotional arc even stronger. Do you want me to do that?